Hi everyone, and welcome back to an A&P 1 or Anatomy and Physiology 1. The first set of slides was introduction to the course, the syllabus, the outline and so forth, the medical terminology course. As I said, I will be reviewing this slightly when we get together in a couple of weeks, but I thought I would continue on to the next slide. So the next slide is a little more around what's happening in the course. And this group is, just a moment here, sorry, I'm using new technology. This group has to do with, there we go, sorry, we'll start again. A&P1, this is the slides on trying to define what it is we're here about. The first thing I'd like you to ask yourself, maybe take a pen and a piece of paper, is just quickly write down an answer to the following question. What is the definition of anatomy? Some of you may know quite easily what that is, and some of you may not know, but certainly take the time or a moment to think about what you think anatomy is and what it represents. Ultimately, anatomy represents the physical makeup, in this case we're doing human anatomy, of the human. And anatomy represents those parts that make us whole. For example, in these two photos or these two diagrams that you see on the slide, the one on the left represents the muscular system of the human body with the skin removed, and you can see all the various muscles that we find throughout the body. As a sidebar, you're going to know every single one of them by the time we're done this next couple of semesters, but anatomically speaking, that is the muscular system. On the right-hand side, you will see what is the heart and blood vessels, which represents the cardiovascular system. This is the actual physical part of the vessels and the tubes that carry blood to the body and back to the heart, where it is having gaseous exchange between carbon dioxide and oxygen and so forth. So the thing to remember about anatomy is it is the physical parts of the body. The next question I have for you is, what is physiology? What do you think the difference is between anatomy and physiology? And we'll give you a moment here to write down an answer for yourself. Physiology is about the processes that go on in the human body. Neither of these is exclusive to each other. Anatomy and physiology work hand in hand. Physiology is the processes that occur from as small as a cellular level up to as large as a organ system level. So physiology is about chemical processes, electrical processes, movement processes, and so forth. But please understand that physiological processes cannot work without anatomical parts. So when we look here, for example, at something called the Krebs cycle, the Krebs cycle is a cellular process by which an important substrate is created that helps the body do everything, because the Krebs cycle helps create, shall we say, the energy or the fuel that runs everything that happens in the human body. We will be getting back to this later. I'm sure some of you are quite excited about that, but we will be getting back to that sometime later on in the program. In the course. The next thing you see here is cellular division. So a lot of you I know have probably taken this before at some point in your biology in high school. But again, this is another physiological process, is cellular division. The last picture you'll find on the slide is all physiology from a systems perspective. So remember, physiological processes can include energy, chemicals, and so forth. So we have these processes that occur in the endocrine system, the reproductive system, the nervous system, the musculoskeletal system, circulatory, respiratory, and so forth. Every one of these anatomical systems have physiological processes that occur within them. So physiology represents processes, chemical and otherwise, that occur within the context, all the way, as I said, down from cellular all the way up to the organism itself being us and everything in between. So when we look at the human body, what's it made of? Well, when science was first created and we started to discover through the use of microscopes and other things, the farther we looked, the smaller things got. And we started to realize that although we had a fully functioning solid human being in front of us, as we looked deeper and deeper into that body, all the way down to and beyond the cellular level, we discovered that the body was made up of various levels of organizations of things that resulted in creating something else. So we went all the way down to, right at one point, down to what was considered the lowest, which was the level of organizations of chemicals. Chemicals come together to form larger things or larger substrates that get used by the body. The smallest at one point that we ever knew were atoms. Atoms are what are called subatomic particles. They have interrelationships, and it is the coming together of atoms that help make up molecules. So H2O. So two molecules of hydrogen, one molecule of oxygen makes up what? Water. Those are known as molecules. Molecules join together to make macromolecules. This is known as the chemical level, and it is the organization of atoms to create molecules and molecules to create macromolecules. Molecules come together to form cells. The cellular level of organization is a bit of specialization. So a nervous cell is different than a blood cell, which is different than an epithelial cell, which is different than a bone cell, which is different than a muscle cell, and so forth. So molecules come together to make the components of cells that are specialized to perform different tasks. And within the context of those few that I listed, each of those is different. So we see here on the slide, at the top we have epithelial cells and we have blood cells. B, we have muscle cells. So these are protection cells. So the epithelial tissues are like your skin, they protect. Blood cells carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. Muscle cells are for movement, ambulation, and so forth. We have E, which is a nervous cell, and of course its big role is to carry messages from one area of the body to another. F is actually a sperm, which is part of the reproductive system that ensures the continuation of our organisms or as human beings. So we've gone from the chemical level to the cellular level. When cells come together to specialize, they form the next level, which is the tissue level. There are 4 types of tissue in the human body. There is connective tissue, there is epithelial tissue, there is muscle tissue, and there is nervous tissue. We will be somewhat discussing all 4, but in this course, the majority of time we spend will be on connective and epithelial tissue. In your Clinical Anatomy 1 class, we will be talking about muscle tissue, and in semester 2 there is a neuroanatomy class which will be talking about nervous tissue. But ultimately, chemicals to cells, cells to tissues, 4 tissues. Those 4 tissues make up that physical body that you see in the mirror of yourself or anyone else that's walking around. We are all made up of these 4 tissues, and as I said, we will be discussing these further on in the course. Cells come together and organize together to form organs. So imagine all 4 of those cells, if I go back to connective, epithelial, muscle, and nervous, all 4 of those tissues make up the specialization of all the various organs of the lungs. So basically, the best definition for an organ is a specialized functioning collection of tissues, of the 4 tissues, that have a particular responsibility. So the heart is a pump. The lungs are for gaseous exchange. Intestines are for digestion of food along with the stomach. Muscles are for movement. The liver is a metabolizer. The brain helps us think. Reproductive organs ensure our continuation of the species. Kidneys control water amounts. They control toxic levels of chemicals. And the spine, of course, bone, holds us up and keeps us walking and keeps us from falling over. So remember now, we've got chemicals to cells. Cells come together to form tissues. Tissues come together to form organs. Organs then come together to form organ systems. So the body is collected into groups that all work together to do one thing or another. So the digestive system includes a number of organs to digest food and get nutrients out of that which we eat, which helps keep the body going. Muscular system helps us move. The integumentary or skin protects us, keeps water in, keeps chemicals and things out. Lymphatic system controls body fluid levels. The endocrine system is our hormones, so it controls a myriad of things. The nervous system is about sending messages. The skeletal system keeps us together. The male and female reproductive organs we've talked about, the respiratory gaseous exchange, urinary water, and the circulatory system, the control of the movement of blood and fluids around the body. So chemicals to cells, to tissues, to organs, to organ systems. Ultimately, all the organ systems come together to create the organism, which is either one of two genders to some degree in anatomy. I mean, we are dealing with gender and what does gender mean in our new world today, because there are variations on this. But ultimately, from an anatomical point of view, dependent upon the way things are organized, we are either generally male or female. What I do want you to take from this is that generally what constitutes, in the traditional sense, the two genders of the organism has to do with the reproductive organs, but ultimately both genders have lungs, heart, muscles, bones, endocrine system, kidneys, bladders, and so on and so forth. So when we look at it, then we go from cells to tissues, tissues to organs, organs to organ systems, and organ systems come together to form the organism. So what is it that's important? What is it that all these things do to work together? What are the important life processes that keep us healthy and keep us going? First and foremost is something called metabolism. So chemicals are either doing one of two things in the body. They're either being broken down to become more simple. So imagine, if you will, you eat a carrot. There are lots of good things in that carrot, but that carrot needs to be broken down into small chemical components in order for the body to take from the carrot all the good things that are in it. The second thing that happens in the body is anabolism, which is the building of things. So let's use meat, for example. We take meat from an animal. It contains high amounts of protein and amino acids, and some of those are very important to our physiology. So through the chewing of it and the breaking down chemically of meats get taken down into their smaller components of chemicals, down to something, as example, amino acids. Those amino acids are directly utilized from our body to build up and make continuing proteins in our body. So the same amino acids that create the animal's protein, we use to create our own. For those who are vegetarian in the class, there are lots of examples of that protein breakdown and buildup in a vegetable or vegetarian sort of way. The second thing is responsiveness. So the other thing is the body is set up through these organ systems to detect and respond to changes, because the inability to detect change and respond to it would ultimately result in us no longer being here and extinct. One of the unique things about any organism, whether that be an animal, a human, or otherwise an insect, if we cannot detect and respond to changes, we're pretty much toast. We are going to be extinct. The third thing is movement. So that movement can be large. So someone going for a run or a sprint or whatever it may be, or moving boxes or carrying things. It can be movement within organs, so you eat food and you're moving solids through. It could be fluids that are flowing through arteries or veins. It could be fluids that are moving from the kidneys to the bladder and so forth. There's also movements of single cells. Certain cells move throughout the environment of the internal body, such as phagocytes, which are white blood cells that eat invaders. And within the cells themselves, there are even tinier structures that move about within the environment of a cell. And without any of these movements, our life processes just would not function well. The fourth is growth. So we are always, things are growing, as I said, anabolically, and the increase in body size by increase of size of cell or increase of number of cells. When we're born, we're quite small, and we need to, through time, grow and get larger, and there has to be some mechanism by which things get larger and build up, whether it be through size or increase of number of cells. So, for example, within your bony areas, or a bone, an example, we have bone cells that help maintain and metabolize normal bone tissue, but there are spaces between those cells that are always being filled up with material. And as we go from being a child to an adult, bones are either growing in length or they are growing in width. And something has to happen in order to have that occur in terms of length and width. Because without that, our bones would not be able to deal with the rest of the size of our body as it gets larger. The next one is differentiation. And we do have cells in our body that don't really have any particular singular responsibility. They're waiting to be told what to become. One of the most amazing things that happens in the human body is that at some point a cell differentiates and specializes to become something in particular, whether that be to become a bone cell, whether that cell decides to become a nervous cell or a blood cell. For example, I have a friend who's suffering from something called multiple myeloma, which is a blood cancer. And what has saved his life, and he's been in remission for 5 years, is he actually had a stem cell transplant where stem cells were injected into his bloodstream and started to take place of the cells that were destroyed by the cancer. And as I said, it's given him 5 more years. The last is reproduction. Obviously, we need to be reproducing, and that is not just through sexual reproduction and creating a new individual, but it's also reproduction and the formation of new cells. We have cells that are dying in our body every hour of every day, and they need to be replaced. Cells do not last forever. Some cells last very much longer than others. Some cells last a lifetime, such as a nerve cell, but other cells, such as epithelial cells inside your mouth or your skin, they are constantly being recreated, and they are constantly dying off and leaving on a regular basis, minute by minute, second by second, hour by hour, day by day, year by year. So we need to be always replacing them. So another important life process is the reproduction and formation of new cells for growth, repair, or replacement. That is the end of this slide set, and I thank you for listening, and we will move on to the next one, and hopefully we'll get you connected and start on the next set of slides. Thank you.